Bugha won $3 million by dominating the 2019 Fortnite World Cup, but with him winning by almost double the points of second place, it begs the question, was he that much better, or was this easier than we thought of at the time? Coming into the World Cup solos, a lot of the predictions revolved around the more veteran players of the game. Tfue, Bizzle, Mr. Savage, Vivid, players who had been to LAN already. And despite there being a lot of hype online, when it came to predictions, players like Bugha, Clicks, Dubs, and Mega, the younger players who were newer to the scene in 2019, were predicted to basically not do that well. At the time, there was a huge debate regarding zero ping. At this time, zero ping players could basically replace any wall from a player higher ping than them with almost 100% success. But despite what my YouTube comments may think, this does not instantly make you an amazing player. However, going into World Cup, there was a lot of concerns that a lot of the zero ping players weren't going to do that well in a LAN environment because everyone was on the same ping. Therefore, they can't just rely on getting the wall first time every time. Obviously, this applied to Bugha as well. We need to remember that this was almost 3 years ago, and the mechanics of the game have developed a lot since then. At the time, Clicks and Bugha were easily the two most mechanical players, yet neither of them placed cones in opponents' boxes when wall replacing yet. Piece control hadn't even commonly been adopted by average players yet, and its use was revolutionary.
What's crazy to me is that every single engagement, he's always taking that extra wall to the side or behind his opponent. That extra floor piece, or that extra stair, or that extra roof.
It's safe to say that now in 2022, the mechanics of the average competitive player was better than the best of the best back in 2019. I asked my Twitter following if they time travel back with their current mechanics and skill, would they be able to qualify for the World Cup? There's a pretty resounding answer of yes that I agree with, but a lot of players said that they would actually win World Cup. Now, I'm going to analyze that at the end of this video, so stick around for that. But I think a lot of people are forgetting truly how good Bugha's performance was. If you take the match history and the points that he got in the World Cup solo finals, he would have won any of the major solo tournaments since 2019 all the way up till now on any region, outside of one, which was Volks winning the OCE solo FNCS. There's a reason that Bugha's socials exploded after winning World Cup. Yes, it was obviously the biggest Fortnite event ever at the time, but also the manner in which he won this clearly was deserving of this fame. However, with the social growth came a lot of criticisms of the gameplay.
Obviously, after I won, like, you're gonna have those people that just out of nowhere will appear and they're just gonna start hating, like, oh, he didn't deserve it, like, he just got lucky.
Now, I actually think there was a lot of luck involved, but only after Bugha had already won. First place he got lucky was his drop spot, lucky landing. Now, analyzing the loot that he had after he disengaged from here in every single game, we can see, was his loot really lucky? No, it was awful. Game 1, he had a grey drum shotgun and only 36 builds, and in Game 2, he didn't even have any shields. The only time he got a launch pad off spawn was in Game 5, where he got 2. Now, if we use Game 1 as analysis, where he had this horrible loot leaving the drop spot, how did he recover this, and how was he always able to get himself into better positions? Well, in this first game, the heavy sniper was absolutely everything. The first heavy sniper elimination he got, he wasn't able to recoup any of that loot from it. The second one onto Cease, again, the majority of this got yoinked. After running on fumes for a long time in the 5th zone, he eventually just heavy snipered into Blaster's box and wins the fight from there on out. This refresh, along with some other materials from around him, gets him almost 100% capped. Now, how he played the endgame is what's the most interesting. He was so far ahead in terms of using mobility. He would wait until the zone catches up, use his shockwave, launchpad, or rift, get to the front side, start shooting at people, look for eliminations, and repeat. Similar to the way players stagger now, almost 3 years later, but minimal players were doing that effectively at the time. And I'm pretty sure we all remember how this game ended.
It might be time soon. Bugha smiling. He's got the health advantage on Creo.
Does.
Folks, it might be time for the shockwave play. Bugha can soar up into the sky. Go for it. Here it is. Shockwave died. Shots coming in. No elimination yet for the first game.
So it's safe to say RNG wasn't on his side, but he managed to win the game with 9 eliminations, a 19-point game, and from this point onwards, he didn't lose first place for the entire tournament. I vividly remember at the time thinking this ramp flip play that he did on the top of this box in the final 1v1 was one of the most mechanical things I had ever seen at the time, and that is just a basic ramp flip that basically anyone can do, which should reiterate how much further behind the mechanics were at that time, but also how impressive Bugha's mechanics were. Game number 2, again, he disengages with horrible loot and then ends up getting into a fight with Sosman for a supply drop. And interestingly, his wall replacing mechanics are still better then than a lot of people's are now. However, he inevitably loses this fight without gaining any points. Game number 3, he spends a little bit more time harvesting, so he leaves with a little bit more materials, but again, only disengages with 1 slurp juice as his heals. This time, Storm Surge and positioning really wasn't that well established, so you can notice his rotates are pretty easy by foot. However, Bugha's understanding is fantastic. He knows where the good sightlines are, and he understands that in order to get a lot of Storm Surge damage, he should build up on top of this other player's base, because this gives him visibility over a much larger area. Now, from here on out, this is where some true RNG comes to play. He pulls the 3rd zone, he pulls the 4th zone, and then he pulls the 5th zone as well. Now, getting zones to land on you and getting good RNG in that sense is often a point of criticism of how a player played. If you were gifted the zones, clearly you just did really well because of the good zone RNG. But was this really the case? Well, if we actually start to look at all of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th zones that Bugha got through all 6 of the games, this is where we can find some interesting trends. Game 1 that we already looked at, his 3rd zone was max distance, 4th zone and 5th zone were both far, and this is by far his biggest game. He got no good RNG this game at all, yet managed to win with 9 eliminations. Game 2, obviously he went down early, so it doesn't really matter, and then Game 2, the game we were looking at, he did get good RNG. However, this was actually his 2nd worst game, only getting 7 points. You can see that game number 6, the final game, was definitely the game where the RNG was strong. He pulled center of 3rd zone, he pulled the 4th, and then pulled the 5th zone as well. So you could easily argue that 2 of the 3 games, which would be game number 3 and game number 6, he had some good RNG in terms of the zones. So removing these 2 good zone RNG games, he still has a total of 40 points, which is 7 more than 2nd place. So even without the 2 good RNG games, Bugha would still win Solo World Cup. The people out there who are paying good attention when I talked about the loot earlier will realize that game number 6, he did get some good RNG because he actually switched up his drop spot. Lucky Landing was getting over contested, so he actually dipped out to the gas station to ensure the win. Here he got some great loot, but on top of that he also found a llama, and this was the game where he pulled a bunch of the zones, so he had some crazy good RNG in game number 6. But as I already mentioned, even without this game, he would have won anyway, so this good RNG in no way impacted his incredible performance. His average eliminations were 3.83, and when comparing this to every other EU top 10 since, this is higher than anyone in any of the EU FNCS solo finals, with the next being Tayson's solo FNCS winning performance being 3.67. And when we look at the average placement out of the 6 games, we see that Bugha's is 18.83, currently in 5th. Now, average placement isn't always the best to decipher who has actually had the best placements in game, because 1/90th place will really throw your numbers, which of course it did because Bugha did get 1/90th place. But another metric is looking at things like top 10s. And if we look at top 10s, you can see that Bugha had 5 out of the 6 games which were in the top 10, only being beaten out by Janice's solo invitational performance where he had 8 in the top 10, but the solo invitational had 12 games rather than 6. So this is a little bit unfair. And maybe if this was a one-time thing, you could say Bugha was lucky on the day. He just played good that one day. But with Bugha's track record so far, winning the last 3 FNCS in a row, it's clear this was no fluke. Now, coming back to the time traveling question, do you think that you, or maybe any of the pros, some of the players right now, if they time traveled back to the World Cup with their current skill, with their current mechanics, their current understanding of the game, could they win? I genuinely don't believe that the majority of players would. I think there's a lot of top pros out there who could, but the average Heats level player, even the average finalist, I think still would not be able to win this lobby. The stress of playing on LAN and any $30 million tournament is no joke and cannot be underestimated as much. And Bugha on the day was just there. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and learned a lot. Please subscribe if you aren't already. Peace.